Hello everyone, welcome to the Legacy of the Monsterverse reviews. Today we'll be going back to 2017 with our second Monsterverse movie we talk about, and that is Kong Skull Island. Plot to the prequel of the Monsterverse, Kong Skull Island, is that we take place in 1973 when a scientific exhibition gone completely wrong after a trip to Skull Island where they awaken the titan beast on the island, Kong. After an explosive battle with Kong, it's up to the humans for a fight for survival, and they also bump into Hank Marlowe, played by John C. Reilly, who has been on the island for a lot longer than the humans. The humans find out more about Kong's story. However, there is also another archenemy on the island, are the devils that live below, known as the Skull Crawlers. It all leads up to a huge war and survival between both the humans and the Titans on Skull Island. And that's pretty much all for Kong Skull Island without giving any spoilers. So what do I think of this prequel to Godzilla 2014 and the prequel to the Monsterverse? Well, in sum up by 3 words, it's a damn good time. And I really think that, you know what, Skull Island is a damn good time. It's a fun popcorn monster action movie that also touches upon war as well, like the Vietnam War and stuff in this movie, which definitely makes this one unique and interesting to the Monsterverse, as it's very serious, but still though, it's quite a silly film, and such a fun film as well. But anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at the history and take a look more about Kong Skull Island. So after Godzilla 2014 broke records in the box office, Legendary wanted to have another monster into their Monsterverse universe that they were planning, and that monster would be King Kong, so they can have him in a Godzilla vs. Kong crossover film, which will eventually happen in the future of the Monsterverse. But anyway, lots of people were really confused about the news because they thought that this would be a sequel or prequel to Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005. Once everyone have heard the news. However, Legendary ran out and confirmed that it will be its own King Kong standalone story, and it will be titled Kong Skull Island. Then came Comic-Con in 2014, where the first look at Kong Skull Island was eventually shot and was seen at Comic-Con, and this is what the new Kong looked like in the film, and a lot of people really accepted it because it looks a lot like the 1933 design mixed with modern day. Then came the trailers and teasers from 2016 onwards to 2017, and then finally Kong Skull Island dropped in theaters on March 11th, 2017. And it made $568 million on a $185 million budget, so the movie was very successful. But it's now time to talk about the cast of characters going through Skull Island. Let's take a look at characters. Now let's talk about characters here, and this one compared to Godzilla 2014's characters, there's a lot more selection of characters in here than in Godzilla 2014, played by much bigger actors. In my opinion, I really do think pretty much all the characters in here are fun actors, and you know, I think most of them play their parts extremely well, especially compared to Godzilla 2014. At least there are some characters here that I at least enjoy and have a fun time with. And throughout the rest of the movie, the cast are moving around in different areas, in different jungles, and in different deserted areas. So in my opinion, I do feel like the characters in Kong Skull Island are definitely a lot better than probably Godzilla 2014. But let's get into the characters. The 2 main leads here we have is Loki and Captain Marvel. I'm not even kidding, but anyway. First we have James Conrad, played by Tom Hiddleston, and in my opinion, he's definitely one of the most entertaining characters in the film. The first scene in the film is where we see him fight these guys in a bar, which was a pretty badass scene, to be honest. And pretty much Tom Hiddleston technically is the Jack Driscoll of Kong Skull Island pretty much as well. Then we have Mason Weaver, played by Brie Larson, who kind of plays the Anne Darrow role in the film, but I mean, she doesn't really that much is in love with Kong, and Kong isn't really in love with her, so I guess there is no Beauty and the Beast connection in this movie, but that's what's interesting about this movie. Her character is also mostly an anti-war photographer, just because she has a camera as well. And she also has a badass scene at the end of the film where she blasts the flare gun and the flare hits the skull crawler right in the face. So yeah, she's a really good character in the film as well. And then we have Hank Marlowe, played by John C. Reilly, which he's more of the comedic character in the film, which no one really seems to like for some odd reason. I don't know why, and lots of people don't really that much like comedic characters when they're, you know, useless, but I thought his character was fine. I especially liked his backstory in the opening of the movie when it takes place in 1944 in World War II when he crash lands onto the island as well as a Japanese pilot. and they pretty much start fighting. However, then there's the scene when Kong shows up, and pretty much the two develop a friendship on the island, as until, you know, the Japanese soldier died. Which is one of the best opening scenes in my opinion. And this is how he's left on the island with the natives of the island. And yeah, he's a pretty good character as well. I would say he's a bit, like, some of the jokes he makes, like, it's not really that great, but I mean, to be honest, I still really like his character. However, let's get to my two favorite characters in the movie, the first one being Preston Packard, played by the one and only Samuel Jackson, which in my opinion, I love Samuel Jackson. He's one of my favorite actors. He pretty much plays the main villain role of the film. He pretty much wants to kill Kong after seeing all his soldiers getting slaughtered by Kong on the helicopter, which after that he has a hatred towards Kong and wants to kill him. Samuel Jackson really has a great performance here. I think this might be his best performance in my opinion. We also have Bill Randa, played by John Goodman, which he mostly plays the Carl Denham role a little bit, but not that much. In that he works for Monarch, and he's going to the island for an expedition this time around. I do feel like John Goodman definitely has a great performance here. One of the standout scenes in the film is his interaction with Samuel Jackson's character. Definitely a great moment, and I do feel like these two are probably the best characters in the film in my opinion. But what about the rest of the crew? The rest of the crew, they're really good as well. But I mean, to be honest, they're mostly just, you know, characters that have been put in here, and that's pretty much it. Food for the monsters. But anyway, let's get to the king himself. The huge question is, what would Kong in 1933 look like in modern day? Well, everyone, this is your answer right here. And this is probably one of the best Kongs on screen in my opinion. While nothing beats the 1933 original and possibly the Peter Jackson King Kong, I still feel like Kong Skull Island's Kong is definitely amazing. I especially love how he looks a lot like the 1933 design. This time is more CG. Kong in this movie is more so portrayed as just a giant animal, where if you bomb his home, he's obviously going to get pissed at you and will attack you at all costs. He's also viewed as the god of the land as well, on Skull Island as well. And also, I really liked lots of the scenes of the film where Kong is attacking the helicopters and other stuff. In my opinion, all of Kong's scenes are amazing. He's definitely one of the best monsters in the Monsterverse in my opinion. Even though nothing stands Godzilla, Kong's definitely up there. However, Kong needs to fight some other threats to the film. So when traveling to Skull Island, you're not alone. There's obviously going to be some terrible things there and some, you know, monsters. And you might meet the devil himself. Yep, the Skull Crawlers. The Skull Crawlers are probably one of the most terrifying villains in the Monsterverse in my opinion. Like, the Skull Crawlers makes the dinosaurs from King Kong look like Barney the dinosaur in comparison. I really like the Skull Crawlers. They look so terrifying, and yet there's still something a bit animal about them as well. That doesn't really make them really too much of a villain, and instead more of, you know, these creatures just trying to live, but unfortunately get destroyed by Kong. But they're still pretty scary things though. And they do have some awesome action-packed scenes as well. Especially the finale with the main Skullcrawler facing against Kong. One thing that really makes me wonder is why they didn't add any dinosaurs to the film, like all the other King Kong movies. But to be honest, I do feel like the Skullcrawler definitely would have been much better than the dinosaurs in the film, which makes it very different, but still very entertaining. We also have the Mother Longlegs here, which is the giant spider in the film. We also have these weird pterosaur looking like creatures. We also have the giant octopus, which is reminiscent to King Kong vs. Godzilla, but I mean King Kong already eats him, so yeah. And then we have a giant buffalo. Yep, a giant buffalo. How entertaining. Best parts about Kong Skull Island are mostly King Kong scenes. I do feel like King Kong is one of the best monsters in the Monsterverse, and he has some of the best parts in the movie in my opinion. Every scene with Kong is amazing, and is full of action and is action-packed. Also, the Skull Crawlers as well are terrifying villainous monsters, which every time they're on screen, it's always filled with horror. Also, I really like all the humans in the movie. I think the human stuff is definitely more entertaining than Godzilla, but still though, I really do enjoy it. I especially like John Goodman and Samuel Jackson. I also like the beginning of the film, the helicopter scene, the Skullcrawler encounter, and finally Kong's finale with the Skullcrawlers, where he absolutely beats the Skullcrawler up, and then eventually rips the Skullcrawler's tongue off with its own hand, with Kong's own hands. Bam, what a brutal scene. I also really like the island. To be honest, this movie gives me a lot of Apocalypse Now and Platoon vibes from all those other war movies as well. I mean, this is a war movie, and the jungles, they're a lot more jungly and provide more history into the island as well, which is one thing I really like about this movie, and that is Kong's backstory. And because in the last King Kong movies, we don't really know too much of King Kong's backstory, and to finally know King Kong's backstory in this movie, or Kong's backstory, is new and different, and is something we have never seen in any King Kong movie before this movie, which is about almost 100 years of King Kong. So that's really crazy to think that this is the first time we get to hear or see King Kong's backstory on Skull Island, which is new and different and what makes it special. That's pretty much the good with the film. Now let's get on to some of the things I probably didn't really that much like of the film. I reckon this isn't really too much of a criticism, this is just in my own opinion, and this isn't really that much huge, but in my own opinion, I really do feel like the natives kind of weren't really that important to Kong Skull Island. Now they are important to the story, particularly with Hank Marlowe, because Hank Marlowe was stuck on the island, and so they were, like, able to have a connection, and also because, the natives expand more of the Monsterverse lore. However, I don't feel like they are that important to the overall story. I mean, it's just something little. Overall, I can't really think of anything to really criticize about Kong Skull Island. Similar to Godzilla 2014, most of the camera shots in Skull Island look very realistic as well. The movie was directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts, which himself is a King Kong fan. With the directing really makes us really believe in Kong's huge, humongous size as well as some of the other creatures in terms of sizing, is mostly with the camera directing, which is very awesome in the film, similar to Godzilla 2014. Anyway, that was pretty much it for Kong Skull Island. To be honest, this is definitely one of the best entries into the Monsterverse, and it's probably one of my favourite entries into the Monsterverse, given to how different it is compared to the other King Kong movies that we got in the past. This Kong movie is completely different to all the other King Kong movies, where it just retells the exact same story as the 1933 movie over and over again. So thank God we got this movie to actually get a new Kong and a new story. And for that, I give it a 9 out of 10. In my own opinion, Kong Skull Island is an entertaining, fun movie that's full of action-packed monster action, while also respecting the king himself, Kong, and making him a much more likable character. But anyway, that's my review for Kong Skull Island. What did you think of Kong Skull Island? Please leave your thoughts down in the comments. Next up, we're going to go back to Godzilla with Godzilla, King of the Monsters. See you then.